we are on our last segment before the conclusion. So, just
Woohoo!
on random story elements from throughout, I just wanted to ask about. Um,
Okay.
all right, so to start off, um, why did you decide to retcon the Rakghouls as being originally from Taris? To my understanding, the original lore just had them just begin appearing there after Karnus Mor's talisman was left there, right?
Yeah, the Rakghoul plague and that came from that crossover event um
Oh,
that Dark
Vector,
Horse
Vector.
initiated. Yeah, the Vector. I kind of always had had issues with that, which we've kind of I touched on sort of earlier. But for better or worse, it existed. Um, but I felt like if there were stronger if there were a stronger backstory to that, I felt it might make the Vector aspects work a little better. And that's really was really the sort of bottom line to that. And we had so you have rat ghouls, you have neck ghouls, you have these other kinds of ghouls sort of roaming about. And it seemed appropriate that there ought to have been an origin point for them, so that when Carnismul gets the talisman, the power, what he's drawing upon, what he's creating, isn't necessarily something new, but
Is already
something
established.
old,
I see.
something yeah, something
You
old,
phrase
something
that better.
dark. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that was really the basis behind that. It's always about strengthening. It's about strengthening the EU. Making it work better. You mentioned, which I don't even think we got into, but you mentioned the controversy with the Yuuzhan Vong.
Oh,
You know, them
yeah. Oh, I
yeah,
completely
coming.
forgot to mention. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Um.
okay. It's
Yeah.
I that was an early controversy. You
Yeah.
know,
I wanted to ask about that because like there was some. So for yeah, those in the audience who don't know, I saw a lot of people thought that it kind of reduced their threat if they came from a satellite galaxy as opposed to a proper other galaxy, which I do not see because they still nearly brought Sky River to its knees. They still and we don't know the density of life in said satellite galaxy, and if they really did go at sublight, that's literally the only plus. If you were, even if you're going at light speed, it would be at minimum several because galaxies are very distant. It would have to be a satellite galaxy for it to have been within tens of thousands of years.
and there's a hyperspace barrier around the Sky River galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So you just answered the question pretty much for me. Additionally, 3PO identifies human DNA
That's
in the
right.
Yuuzhan Vong. So when you put all these things together, it just seemed to make the most sense that they came from and they're called dwarf galaxies, and maybe that's a misnomer. These are tremendously vast places.
Like our own Greater Magellanic Cloud is still like several hundred. Well, no, not hundred. No, it's several dozen thousand light years across, to my understanding.
There you go. And so we know that Sky River is in itself like the largest. I think the largest galaxy in like fictional and real history. And so
Oh,
the dwarf galaxies must also be larger. Um, so I never saw that as any kind of diminishment of them. But I understand, I get it. Like fans do develop like pet theories and ideas that they fall in love with. Um, and it is an unfortunate thing. Like when you develop, when you do, and this is true for any expanded universe. When you add more stories and things, and you tackle some of these things, you do sometimes ruffle feathers. Um, when things are developed along the way, because it's not how this fan would have developed things. It's not how he thought things would go or how he thought things were. So there's always that, danger, I guess you would call it, in expanding a universe. It's because some people get very attached to their ideas of how things are. And that's okay. I mean, look, it's all good. I'm always sorry when if I do ruffle feathers, because it's never my intent to do so. Um, I I'm in the opposite camp from the director of The Last Jedi, who apparently thinks it's a good thing when half of your yeah, that's awful. I never want that. I go out of my way to try to not do that. But sometimes in storytelling, you really do have no choice. Again, like when you're putting the pieces together and say, well, what makes the most logical sense here? So really, it was, yeah. You pretty much said it all for me, so I appreciate that.
Well, you're welcome. um, so, next question. With the final edition, there was a massive emphasis and expansion on the ancient Sith and their gods. Am I correct in assuming this was in response to the relatively underwhelming portrayal of the quote-unquote true Sith in SWTOR, as opposed to the massively hyped-up entities hinted at in KOTOR 2? Like, I remember stumbling across some real old forum debates from, like, 2005, wondering if the true Sith were actually the Gel, because there was an RPG source book, a Coruscant in the Cold Worlds. There was a passage about the caretakers of ancient Gel tomb museums on Coruscant hearing ghostly whispers going "Coda Mata," which I think you referenced.
Yep.
So tying into Maul's theme and all, and one of those outdated theories I find super fascinating. But yeah, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on the whole true Sith thing.
Chris Avalon was building to something, and
Oh yeah.
those again, we're back to lost stories, like that always upsets me, like when we lose things that didn't come to be. I loved what the concepts that he was really drawing towards, these kind of like Lovecraftian horrors from beyond. And this was the perfect opportunity to restore that, to look exactly at what Chris's interviews said about this. And it was completely in line with, also, even like long before KOTOR 2, where I had thought that things should go. So the two really did align independently of each other.
Then you also tied it in with Shadows of Mindor, the Randites.
Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. That's it. There's the Way of the Dark is a philosophy that is very different than your the worldview of a Stygian Sith. The Stygian Sith, which was the Sith from the Stygian caldera specifically, and the ones that we're most commonly familiar with, they're interested in, obviously, the aggrandizement of power, but also, to a degree, order. I love the Knight Errant book, by the way. If you haven't read that by John Jackson Miller, I recommend it to anyone.
Daimonet and Odionet and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's fantastic, because you get to see for the first time during the same time period
Very
how
different
different
philosophies.
empires, yes, um, they're all terrible, but to different degrees. There's one that's like almost like, oh, that's not so bad, but then when you get into it, it's like, oh,
Oh, that's
that's not so great.
bad.
But they're also different, and that was completely fascinating, and it makes sense to me, because different rulers who are ruling these worlds would have slightly different approaches based on their personality, based on how they think things would would work. But the central theme is still order.
Mm-hmm.
But the Way of the Dark
Way to Dark
is
control.
not interested, yes, in preserving the order of. To them, that's nonsense. That's ridiculous. The darkness wants to completely annihilate everything and then start almost from scratch with their kind of the
I think of
yes
I
their
think of
creed their
I think of a quote from a Boba Fett quote in I believe one of I think it was the last one standing. It was evil is intelligence in the service of entropy. And I believe
mm,
that sums up the Way of the Dark.
yeah, that's it perfectly. And you get to see the examples of, or at least a taste of that.
Oops.
Oftentimes things are best left to the imagination, but you get to see a taste of that when they travel into the dark worlds and the shadow worlds and these regions within the Ganinga Gap, like way deep in the unknown regions. Um, and what you basically have is like like living almost like Nazgul in a sense, like you these
Witches.
powers and these creatures and these and it's just horror. It's horror piled upon horror,
Oh yeah.
and
Chris
that's
Cold's
like that's
depictions were on point.
yeah, he was perfectly suited for that kind of thing, and I was thrilled to be able to work with him to developing that, and some things that he kind of ran with on his own. I was like, you read my mind, like you exceeded, or even where I was thinking, um, and that's just so much fun. Like it's just so much fun to play with, to think about, and to have out there like this truly existential threat, to the galaxy is tremendous fun. You know,
Oh
and
yeah.
what a great yeah, what a great like your imagination can go so many places with that in terms of like where because they're moving towards this. They're moving towards basically coming to and there's a lot of them, and many are going to align with them, um because they don't have a choice. That branch, the True Sith, are really quite powerful in comparison to the Stygian Sith and sort of their way. And it was cool to develop
I mean, that was what
and to see
Kreia
the
said, right? Like she was like, we would be nothing but children with like playing with like something like that.
yes, yes, exactly. And that's to me, like that's where the EU, if it were to come back and they were move the story forward. Now, obviously, you want to connect. You have to connect Crucible to the Legacy comics, which is tremendous fun. And you also too, I would fill in Jason's 5-year journey
Mm-hmm.
to make his transition less abrupt. You you can't
Yes.
change a character so dramatically off screen and not have the reader or audience cry foul and say, "Well, this is character assassination." And maybe there was no opportunity to do that just like logistically, but moving forward, if they were to restart Legends, then that's something that I think needs to be done. But then again, like I said, now moving forward past the Legacy comics, that's something that you can build towards is that coming ultimate war, with the True Sith,
Mm-hmm.
which would be huge, and you could bring so much into that. I mean, it would dwarf the Yuuzhan Vong War, and dwarf even Abeloth's sort of like like path of destruction through the galaxy. Um,
I wanted to
and
get to
so
Coda later, but what you
yeah,
described was insane. the
thank
the
you,
sheer scale is wow.
thank you. Um, that was, that's there. That's there. It's just it's a small piece. It's not meant to interfere with what we just described, but it had to be enough so that if the EU never does get, you know, that expansion that we're all hoping for, that move towards the final war, that at least fans can have a taste of what. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it was a nice opportunity too to sort of revisit some characters from earlier in the story and see where they might fit into, where they might be in all of this. So, and of course pulling in from other areas too. Um, so thank you.
Of
I'm
course.
glad that worked. Yeah,
We can talk more
these
about
things are always a risk.
yeah, more about that a little later. Um, so yeah, just want so as something of a Mandalorian obsessed individual, you know, going so
Mhm.
far as to build my own armor. I
Uh,
I loved
that's brilliant.
your little tidbit about Mandalore the Ultimate never removing his mask as a result of his vision on Shogun, which makes perfect sense. And then that being the origins of the Children of the Watch's, misattributed custom is genius.
Right.
Like it
Thank
was
you.
it was it was really annoying at cons when I would be like 5 hours in armor, take off my helmet, and like, hey, what kind of Mandalorian are you? I'm like, that's not that's not no. Thankfully they cleared it up in the show later,
That's
but
that's hilarious. I love that story.
I was like, not every clan. But anyway, that it was yeah, no, you cause and you've still kept that little bit of mystery of as to whether he was um the one from the Tales of the Jedi comics who picks it up, or as Canderous said, there was the second, the pretend or there was the true successor of the Indomitable. Like that whole thing's always been shrouded in so much mystery. Um,
Yeah.
but
You don't want to answer every mystery, and for everything you missed. There's a great quote from the series Caprica about the difference between questions and mysteries that I don't remember at the moment, but it's worth looking up because it's quite profound. But in any case, for every question that you answer, because mysteries are technically unanswerable, really, because they belong to the divine. It's something along those lines. But for every question you answer, you wanna
add
add
another
more questions. Yeah, you really do. Because that again, that's something that readers and myself as a fan are very attracted to, because it just opens your imagination to go places and to wonder and to discuss and to debate and to to stay up at
yeah.
night thinking about, you know, it's yeah, that was another area of considerable thought, put into was leave questions and mysteries,
I
let them
apologize if you hear a
abound.
vacuum behind me.
Oh, I actually don't, so no
Oh, good,
worries.
good, good. Um, yeah, mystery, mystery, mystery. Um, so next question is, as something, yeah, I talked a little about being like in paleontology. Um, I loved your little tidbit on dinosaurs. I myself have noted straight up ceratopsians, aka Agamarian beasts, and straight up outdated depictions of Spinosaurs and Dawn of the Jedi. We talked a
Mhm.
little earlier about Land Before Time. Was So that brought me back into thinking. Like, I loved your phrasing of how the Celestials built upon the template of the prime the plane of Eret. I think it's like use the neoteric protoplasts. I think that's the term you used. I was like,
Yeah.
what does this mean? Like I started like looking up. I'm like, I love the, using the upon the forms of animalia, fungi, planta. It's like I love the way you phrased all that. I was like,
Thank you. Thank you.
because I mean,
Yeah. How else do we explain how so many of these things are running around?
exactly.
The universe.
As yeah, again, paleontology, evolutionary biology type person here. I'm I find convergent evolution to be a lazy explanation for
Yeah.
for in sci-fi settings as to why it's like, no, it's not sufficient. There needs to be, it's not plausible for it not to have been some sort of, be it a higher power in this case, or just sufficiently advanced aliens transplanting, because for all these humanoid slash, I mean, anything resembling anything from Earth, like the only like there are very few speculative evolution projects that have plausible aliens to me, because like every time like I see another thing of little green men, it's like, okay. But no, so you managed to do that so well, because I yeah, in this case it was a higher power building upon what happened naturally via evolution, theoretically, on the Prime universe.
I've always been fascinated with, these are old science fiction debates that fans and authors would have. That if we were to encounter another alien race, that they would be really so radically different. And yet, the idea that, yeah,
To me, like only the
you
works
go,
of like CM Kozeman have been like, I'm not sure if you're familiar, have been like plausible. It's like, and very few others. But sorry,
yes.
I keep interrupting you. I'm sorry.
Oh
Go on.
no, please. I love when you do. Um, it's great because that's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was in mind with that. Was those old sci-fi debates between authors and fans, but as well as, it's, how do I put this in words? Before I lose the plot thread entirely. There was a debate on the, not a debate, but there was a conversation about this recently on Marcel's Revanchists YouTube video, where some of this was also discussed a bit, which was interesting. So it's nice that it sparks these kinds of conversations. I think that's where I really wanted to go with this, was that's what, like, science fiction, however you want to define science fiction, really, like, that's what it's supposed to do. It's kind of supposed to have us ask questions and look at these things and imagine, right? Ultimately is to imagine, and that's, you, like I said, you're coming in from a science perspective, and that is a very valid perspective. What is the current, so based on current scientific thinking, like, how would this be? Like, how would this manifest? Um, and yet, on the other side of the coin, like space opera, like I said,
They don't have
views
to concern themselves with that. Yeah.
they not only didn't concern themselves, but like on Barsoom, John Carter encounters, different races of humans.
Just straight up.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and while they are oviparous, I believe, like, they're egg laying, but in every other way, they're human. And if anything, he's the one that's more superhuman, because he can,
Right.
he
Because of
can
gravity.
take these tremendous, leaps and all that. And incidentally, a lot of like comic book superheroes really do come out of that tradition, because that was such a popular series back then. Yeah, yeah, Superman. Like, you can really
Huh.
see, like,
Oh wow!
the
Wait a minute. I
yeah.
didn't realize that. Because it wasn't even the original version of Superman couldn't even fly. He could just
That's right.
leap tall buildings in a
That's
single
right.
bound.
Yep.
So it was all from
Yeah.
the higher gravity of Krypton or something. Wow. Huh.
It was all, and you had early space opera writers were writing early comics. So the influences are all there. There's this wonderful cross connection. But in any case, so that mystery was never solved as to why there, and because so many sci-fi writers built on what Burroughs was doing to the point of even setting it on the same worlds, um, you did that tradition continued into what we see in the modern day. So this gave me a great opportunity to explain why why that is. Um, and even too, like, it was a way to kind of save. That's a strong word. But like, a lot of people will look down on that stuff now and be like, "Oh, well, we know that Mars is nothing like what Burroughs and Brackett and these others described. Like, there
Doesn't
are no
demerit
actual,
them.
yeah, like,
We know that nothing. You know, the sky is not held up by Atlas. Doesn't make Hercules' story any less interesting. It's
absolutely. But this was also a way of like letting those stories still be literal. Like, so what if it's not our Mars? What if the Earth is not our Earth? If it's an Earth world in Sky River, and if it's a Mars in
that
Sky River,
that
then
is
this can
that
all
is
have
why there's a
taken place.
differences.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So that was, so yeah, it's so weird because now now I'm like providing retcons for completely other, completely other like universes, but by folding them in, since Lucas did take inspiration from Burroughs and from Brackett, so by folding them in, it all becomes part of the larger family.
Yep.
So we're back to an expanding, now an expanding literary universe.
Right.
So anyway, that's the long story.
That's the long story. But a long story. That's interesting.
Thank
um,
you.
so yeah, talking about sci-fi and scientific concepts and again on the whole drawing own conclusions thing. Um, Archon Ood had a rather vehement rant against multiverse theory,
Mm.
whereas other parts kind of confirm it. Like we talked about the one canon, three universes, and I mean I guess it
Yeah.
depends how you define it. As is it by the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics or just the existence of parallel universe? I mean that. What's your take on that?
I'm in agreement with her. I mean, that's my interpretation. Is I agree with her, and her point, I think, isn't that there aren't other universes out there. It's that um they are, how do I put this? Like, there is thought there, just like books in a library, I think, is the term that she uses. Um these aren't these aren't just sort of blind, they don't just blindly come into existence. So in other words, if you turn left, okay, and suddenly another universe pops into existence, in which you turned right, like, to her, like, that's the height of absurdity. You know, that's not how it works, is what she's basically saying. So it's in, and yet at the same time, there are, she acknowledges, like, well, there are other universes in which, you know, the Celestials weren't as careful. Um, so that's interesting. And Talatni and Coldan Design and Splendid App do visit. They visit one of these other universes. I don't mean the Prime Universe, which they do initially. I mean they visit another universe entirely that has no connection to the Sky River universe.
Yes.
You know, um, and that one has what appears to be like a multiverse type of thing, and So there's some commentary. I'm not going to go any deeper into that because, while I said yes, spoilers are okay. I like to let people discover things on their own,
That's
but
totally fair.
um, that 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 that's not unknown. That won't be unknown to some readers. I'll just put it like that. Um,
I'm trying to
and you can
recall.
make of that
But
what you will.
yeah.
Yeah, they're like kind of watching the events of this and they're kind of commenting on it, the three of them, which I always
Great. Now
found
I'm trying to
amusing.
recall because again, there's so much.
So much, I know.
Fair enough.
um, so and also too, like the if you recall, speaking of another like universe and another very, very, very rare crossover, because again, there's a hyperspace barrier, but the architects have this ability to kind of and sometimes holes are open that are not meant to be opened,
Yeah.
passageways. So you have you have Howard the Duck,
That's right.
which is a Lucas. That's but it's also part of the
Marvel.
Marvel
Yeah.
universe, and you know,
I mean, you
so
you did say one of the Supreme Maker's titles is the one above all.
yeah, yeah. So this was speaking of this multiverse, since you brought it up, this was a way of looking at saying, okay, so if there is realm distinction, which is what I call it, I don't know if I think that might come from somewhere else. It escapes me at the moment. Realm distinction meaning that like so each realm is really its own thing. It's its own place in space and in time.
Mhm.
Okay, but there are very, very, very um, tenuous connections. Maybe even connection is too strong a word, but there are other realms outside.
Mhm.
There are other realms outside of those realms. So some of that is discussed in the in between realm. Splendid App, who's the most curious about these kinds of questions,
Right.
compared to the others who are less, Cold Endesign is less interested in that. Yeah, it's they're all the three of them are all so interesting to me. Um, but so yeah, like that reconciling that. First of all, how do you how do you deal with Howard the Duck number one, without dismissing this because this is part of the Lucasverse now. So um, there was a little bit of I was a little faster and looser with that than I was with like even the Ewok stuff, where
Yeah.
I was like the way the film currently stands, as a film, it really doesn't work. Um, it's not to put down anybody who loves that film. That's all well and good, and that there's that version exists for a reason, as it turns out. So yes, so that's still there. But then what's the actual story was kind of something that I wrote and rewrote again many times until I sort of hit upon where there's still humor, because he is a funnier character, and Lucas obviously likes humor, so you still have a sense of humor with that, but and you still have the basic events that occur, so including these sort of demonic entities, which again are connected to this other universe. Um,
Oh, with Willow, right? The and
um,
wine.
oh, and the wine is a whole other thing.
Oh.
That's a whole other conversation we
Oh,
could
okay.
have, because that initially was going to be brought into Star Wars for real
That's
at
right.
one time before it was made into an April Fool's joke, and I was always disappointed with that, like that
Mhm.
decision, and then so when the opportunity presented itself, it was like, oh no, that's part of the Star Wars universe, 100%. And Lucas co-wrote, you know, at least he laid out the outline for the sequel trilogy of the book sequel trilogy, The Chronicles of the Shadow War, um, which Chris Claremont wrote. And there's some great stuff in there that I absolutely found relevant to this whole thing, specifically with Elora Danan and the fact that she. This is spoilers, by the way, guys. So if you haven't yet read that series and you intend to, like cover your ears for the next minute, turn away. But there's an I don't want to spoil it for you either. So if you
It's fine.
if because
La 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 la. No, I'm probably gonna forget anyway.
Oh well,
Go ahead.
yeah. There's a let's just say there's a character from an like a whole other dimension, a duplicate. Um,
Mm,
so Lucas was already playing with this idea
with multiple.
early on, and that allowed, again, back to the three universes, one canon.
I remember that
Yes,
in SE, yeah.
yes, yes. So there's the foundation for that is right with Lucas himself,
Right.
because he established it. So it really was just a matter of applying that now to the larger Star Wars universe, and its other, you know, its other universes that are sort of alongside it,
Right.
Apiron and Hyperion, which blended app had a hand in, and allowing those. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So wait. Please clarify this for me. Aperon is new canon. Hyperon is infinities, right?
I I sometimes even confuse the two.
Oh,
I think so. I
okay.
think Apiron, or is Apiron like the Infinity Worlds, and Hyperion is potentially the Disney canon. Um, it might be that. Um,
It's one or the other.
but it's one or the other. In either case, it was a way to bridge that, the why this exists, and how we can all basically come back together again, you know, without having to have this pointless conflict that we're all currently sort of embroiled in, whether we want to be or not. It was a way to provide that bridge, and while not interfering with anything that they want to do, Lucas and its creators moving forward, because it's there. It's like there in the background, and it's um I don't know. So again, another sort of controversial thing there, but it all stems right from these Chronicles of the Shadow Wars books. Like the foundation is right there.
There we go.
So they're good. If you liked Willow,
I haven't seen that
um,
actually.
you haven't seen Willow yet. Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're in for a treat. It's good stuff.
Good to know. Good to know. All I know is Warwick Davis. uh, but cool. Yeah. No. I because I talking about multiverse stuff. Like I was just thinking about stuff from the alternate ending or even alternate choice in varying video games. Like Force Unleashed has its dark side ending.
Yep.
Every action in KOTOR and SWTOR can lead to something different.
Yep.
So I was just thinking about that stuff when the um, yeah, I don't know.
For Apiron, like where all those things can have happened.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, I mean that was essentially it. Like, so there's room for everything. Like a lot of fans were upset when Revan was revealed to be, a man and not a woman, or oh, well, maybe there's a version in which he was. So it again, it just allows room for fans to play and to kind of have what they want, you know,
Yeah.
their version of the ending, their version of, where that can all be, and it's all like legitimate.
Right. So
Because that Yeah, that's
So
why App
Arconoid's
created.
statements are true from a certain point of view.
Yes, yes,
Or
exactly.
not. Or they're not from a
Yeah,
certain point of view.
yeah.
Um,
Like she parses what she says carefully because she's trying to convey information to, this guy who's really kind of resistant
mhm.
to, like a lot of what she's telling him. Which I always find amusing. Like the I love all those like little arguments and stuff
Oh,
that they
I
have.
love
They
the
crack
dialogue.
me up.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like,
Thank you.
yeah. Arcot and Q9 just roasting our whole list. Like,
It's, it's
it's funny. It's funny.
it's so much fun. Yeah,
But
thank you. It's great.
but yeah. Going back just a little bit, we were talking about Revan. Um, so here's one bit of essay that hit me hard, confirming so many KOTOR theories and previously abandoned concepts. Namely, linking Tales of the Jedi and KOTOR more like they were originally meant to be. So
Yeah.
so you finally confirmed, yes, Aaron K is Kreia. Yeah, and then you the links you made with Bastila being Vima's student, Mitra being a Sunrider, and the big one, the one that
Yeah.
made my jaw drop, look back over, did I read this right? What? Revan is Ulick's son. I just, it makes so much sense. It ties up so neat. Like, where did you get that idea from? Like, just, realizing with Revan's mysterious background and it lining up timeline wise is like, wow.
Just talking to fans and talking to Ed and really yeah, just paying attention to the chatter and also for me too because I just it never made sense to me the abrupt how Tales of the Jedi came to this sort of abrupt end and now there's this whole like I don't know I had always envisioned that there was supposed to be this seamless connection between the two. Um and it seemed like that would have been a plan at one time and then stuff happened, like reasons
Yeah,
and
because
different
Bastila
things and
was meant to be, yeah, but was before there was the whole copyright issues with the Sunrider name.
yeah, such nonsense with that. It was like a truck company or something. I mean,
I thought it was a
really.
comics thing. Maybe it was
It's
both.
funny. There are different theories. Yeah, I'd heard it was like the name of a truck, and whatever the case was, it's nonsense. I mean, come on, like, but whatever. It was all about really restoring what with myself and other fans believed should have been. And I know not everybody's in love with that idea, and that's fine. Again, you're not going to, not everybody's gonna, be on board with these things. But I'm grateful it worked for you, and it worked for a few other people as well. But it just felt right. It
Yeah,
felt like this was,
it
and
just
I ran
ties
it
it
by.
in so good.
Thank you.
Like,
Thank you. I really did. I ran it by quite a few people, including one guy, Steven, who's writing a KOTOR novelization and expansion. And
mm,
he loved the idea, and so I just wanted to get the feedback from those who loved KOTOR to see does this work because or is this a step too far? Um, and yeah, it was thumbs up across the board. So
there it is.
so again, apologies to those for whom it doesn't work. Like I never want to ruffle feathers, especially and crush other pet theories. Because but I'm glad that for a lot of you it does. So thank you.
Of course, and furthermore, with Revan's mother, Valdani, the fact that she was the one who, I guess the implication is she's the one who stood up to Cassis Fett, and eventually Revan
Right.
found her. Like, that adds such a layer of tragedy. Like I know some people might say it was like, oh, that's so coincidental, yada. But it's like, what in Star Wars isn't? It's like, but it's like, it, wow. So
Yeah,
much.
the force is at work.
The force is at
Yeah,
work.
I
There
mean,
it is. There it is.
yeah.
And so with Valdani, going back to the linguistic stuff for a sec. Uh, so Valdani in Mandoa, it's they shadow me. I mean, well, da being the archaic form of shadow, not the modern Prudi.
Right,
Wait, no,
right.
sorry. I was thinking of Huerta because da Huerta Ver. Yeah, other yes. All that stuff. What was that intentional?
If from my recollections, it was because Mandoa is easy to. It's easy to see the. You could find the linguistic roots of it based on the work. A lot of the work that Karen, Travis had done, and others
Oh
as
yes.
well. Yeah, credit where it's due. I mean, so yeah, I believe that that was intentional. Like 99.9% were very intentional, and then the other percent were, contributor, contributor like either fan names or Tuckerisms
Right.
of names, which was super helpful because if I had to, because of the nature of how I work when it comes to nomenclature, I would just agonize. I would agonize an entire day over a name, and
Understand.
yeah, you don't have the luxury of that much time. But I can't help it. Like I just it upsets me if I can't do it. So the having Tuckerizations to work with, or fan names, one or the other was super super helpful in being able to kind of plug those in. And I still had to work to come up with a name that sounded good in my ears and in my mouth. I remember my mouth feel again. Like you want to be able to read these things out loud and have it sound authentic, and not sound cheesy, which is the problem with a lot of uh, less carefully designed Tuckerisms. Is it just doesn't sound real. It sounds stupid, like so, like
Yeah.
trying to avoid that. But those that the names that weren't were cases of me agonizing um for a day to come up with, yeah, a name based on either, like in that case, that like I said, that was a little easier because that's all there. But Wiktionary was my friend with many of the other names, and ideas. So I'm glad, thank you, I'm glad that that worked out for you. And it's funny to me because like I met people at Legends Con that, like Ali, for instance, I named the wife of Frida Nad, who had never been named before. Um, and she was like that for her was like amazing. Like that was she's like, that's the one thing I had wanted, and you did it, and it's so amazing, and now I can, like she was so thrilled. Um,
I
and
mean,
I'm grateful
so am I
because
as
that
to
was
what
the
you gave
last.
me. I'm beyond honored.
Thank you.
I'm not
Yeah,
proud to
that was
myself saying which
fantastic.
one, but yeah.
Man, I'm very glad that you liked it because it's like another consideration too. It's like, oh, I hope they like it. Like I hope it's this is a cool thing.
Just
And so it is nice getting the feedback when people say that they do like the names that they were given, and the characters, and it was so helpful to me to have that, because God is like I had already stretched the patience of you guys, the contributors, for so long, you know, and I'm grateful that you guys were so amazing. You were like, "Oh, take the time you need," and but
what
you
matters
don't
is
you
the
never
final.
want to.
What matters is the
Yeah,
final product. And
it
look at
is. It is, but you don't want to impose on the generosity of people. You really don't. And
yeah.
and I was not unaware of, like, George R. R. Martin's, and the
Oh
Song of
yeah,
Ice and Fire.
George. Where
Yeah,
is
like
where is Winds of Winter?
right, exactly. I was never cognizant of that. It's like I don't want to be in that scenario. I've
Yeah.
got to move on these things. So thank God, yeah, you guys were so incredible with your patience, and thanks also to the editors too, who spent so much time going over this again and again and again and again. It all blows my mind. The whole thing.
Not sure if I have the authority to say this, but as one of the fans, you are most welcome.
Thank you.
um,
Thank you for saying it.
yeah. I mean, though actually, the talk with Valdani got my brain first. Okay, because I don't know who else to talk about this to, but talking about the etymologies of a fictional language, like I just want to say, like, there's some weird connections of Mandawa to Latin or Romance languages. Solus for one slash alone. Like solo. Uh, Freaking Lagartos. Like I know Karen Travis there was like Germanic and Celtic influence, but like I'm like hmm. If any of you viewers has any other such connections, feel free to drop a comment. But I'm just like Lagartos war dragons. Hmm.
Yeah.
For the record,
Yeah.
Lagarto is lizard. I'm like
Yeah. So you see, like, those things made it. If you recall going back to the tongue and their first interactions with, with the with the Zell who came over, from Eartha. So there is a right off the bat, there is a kind of a lingua franca that's sort of created there to sort of help reconcile why Mandoa would have, um, you know,
influences from Earth languages.
influences, yeah, from these languages, where that shouldn't be the case. Um,
Yeah.
so that was, yeah. So careful, yeah. You have to. So again, research, research, research. And I get why people shy away from it, because it's hard sometimes to make sense of these things. But it's worth it, because if you can find the solution, then you've brought some, little joy to fans who've been wondering, like, how, why, it doesn't make sense.
Very well said. But
Here's how it might make sense, though. It's I love that.
yeah. Um. So yes, we're getting very close to the end now. Um. I thank you so much for staying this long. Uh.
I'm enjoying it. This is fun.
Glad to hear it. So yes, I'm very much approaching the end. So with one thing that's very near and dear to my heart, you finally gave closure to Empire at War Forces of Corruption story. I thought we'd never see that, but here we are. Sillery found Darth Dreadwar's tomb. By the way, fascinating character. Well done, grading. But
Thank you.
I'm just I never thought it would happen. Here it is. Just the I just one of the aspects I love the most about SE is just the conclusions to thing or elaborations upon things that I never thought would see the light of day.
Yeah, I love her. Seriously, that whole thing, that's such a great. She's such a great character and such a great story. And you're right, like
Literally last year I replayed through the campaign and I was like, "Oh, that's it." But
I'm glad that I was able to provide some closure, to her story,
and Cuddles the
and
Rancor.
some context. Yeah, that's. that stuff is great. It's you always like that's how you have to put yourself like well what as a fan like what do you want like what would you want to see and then how is it relevant to the story you're telling because there was a lot of other things that I would have loved to have seen but they don't fit into the context of SC in any way shape or form so it's not appropriate to do anything with that but hers was one that was like it was perfectly fit.
There's this
It was
cliffhanger of
perfectly.
this ancient Sith.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
That I love her journey, and I just love her character. She's so interesting to me. And there were different conceptions as to how to end, like how her end would come. Um, and I was finally satisfied with the one, where she lives on and she influences,
yeah,
you
with
know.
the other Night Sisters.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought, "Oh, now this interesting?" Like, it has that echo to her earlier journey and her thoughts as, like, because she's one of the ones that goes into the unknown regions, and sees some of the weirdness of
Yeah.
this. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And where I think there's even an invitation to her at one point to, why don't you stay and become, like join us, and she's like, nah.
No, sorry. I'll see you guys later. No.
And I like her dedication to her sisterhood. Like,
Yeah.
even though
Which
like
is,
she's
very,
part of.
yeah, ironically for a dark sider,
Yeah,
she's yeah, committed
this
to.
is loyalty.
Yeah.
She does. She's a much more noble character than Tiber Zan is. And that's always again, it's always fun to have characters that have these contrasting worldviews and approaches to life. And that's what makes that dynamic so interesting. She's got to play along with him to
Yeah.
get what she needs, and but he's not an idiot either, So he holds this threat over her head that you listen if you don't give me what I demand, I'll bomb your world to smithereens.
Yep.
And so she's got to be super careful. But then, so she plays good, she plays nice, and then events take a turn that allow her an opportunity to get away from them, steal a ship, and gain some leverage.
Yep. With the holograms.
And
Yeah.
boy, I love that. I love the way that whole thing flowed. Um, and then with Dread War, where she's got another one with a completely different kind of like set of beliefs and ideas of how things should be. That's from her.
Like
And
I love
another
that.
one.
Like from the very beginning, she's like, "I'm not interested in being your apprentice. I'm not interested in blah yada yada yada." It's like, and he's just fair enough. It's like,
Right.
what a refreshing conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. And so, it was like it didn't seem right for her to just end, like for her to just, I was like, you want to always leave room for others to kind of take up and run with it even further if they choose to. But if not, then at least there is an end. There's an end with the potential for more. That's
Yep.
sort of how and it just felt I don't know, it felt right. Oftentimes as these decisions are based on, like intuition,
Yep.
as to you try something one way, it's like, no. Where initially I had her just sort of dead. It's like that's not
Let's,
it's not
let's add
working.
let's add a little something more to it.
Yeah, it needs something. It need what? Oh, there it is. The answer was right there all along. Sometimes you don't see it. Again, the process of editing, like you need to take time away from the story you're telling.
Oh
This
yeah.
is this is advice, yeah, for all writers and whatever artists. Leave it, leave it alone. Walk away, for a period of time, and then come back to it. and then see what the story tells you when you're now rereading where it's like fresh. Sometimes when you reread your stuff, it's almost as if like, oh, who wrote that? Like, oh, like it reads like it's someone else's. So like on Marcel's video where he's read aloud certain portions, and I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, like, did I write that? Like that's all right. That's not terrible, Like that's interesting to feel it because I'm a bit now removed from it, and it again it's starting to read like it's somebody else wrote it, which is such a bizarre, fascinating phenomena that happens. But for a writer who needs to edit his own work, just take a bit of time away from it and then come back, and then the story will tell you if it works, if it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, where you might need to take it. Um, that's advice I've learned from experience, time and time again.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I have one sole question remaining on that whole bit, though.
Okay.
Why does the Carbonite army look like they're from Revan's time period? Or did Revan base his soldiers' armor on that of Dread War's minions? Hmm?
Yeah, this is something, right? We're seeing. Sorry, the screen just went black. We're seeing like, so Palpatine has like overt, very ancient Sith kind of designs.
Oh yeah, wait.
Um,
You even retcon. You managed to explain that one piece of art about Admiral or Moff, the shipbuilder of the old Sith Empire with the secular no, uh uh the dreadnought.
yeah,
You explained that. Sorry. Please continue. I just
you got it. No, you
yeah.
you answered your own question there because
Bellator, I think.
that's it. Yes, that's it right there. So there are design elements that the Sith are drawn to. Yes, because they feel there's power in these things. There is purpose to design. And there's also an aspect too where they like, which is creepy, like they like to flaunt it. And they like the fact that nobody knows. Nobody knows where it came from. Or if they do, they just think, "Oh, well, that's an interesting,
Well,
just
I
like
think that's the whole thing. Even in was it in the Incredible Cross Sections or sorry something or other that shows like Palpatine's statue were
yeah,
a Sith. He's like flaunting it right in front. It's like he's so smug that it's like, yeah, that's Sith. Nobody knows, but I'm doing a little trolling.
because think about right, exactly. So if like a modern politician had like, you know, I don't know, like armor or something from Nero's reign, in his office, would anybody really bat an eye and think, "Ooh, that's a red flag"? No, they would just think, "Oh, it's an interesting historical piece." Like they might not even recognize that it's like from Nero or it's from Caligula or whatever the case might be. But for the Sith and for any one of these secret society types, it's all got meaning, and it's all, you're right, it's all like this trolling, like haha, like you guys are beneath me because you don't know what I'm doing right under your nose.
Very well said.
Um, yeah, yeah. So that's why we're seeing repeat designs going back, centuries, and things are brought back that were from old. Because that was early on in the EU that had, I don't know, had puzzled me. Like before I figured that out, that had always puzzled me. I'm like, why is the design like? Why are we seeing certain repeat? You know, where like normally, like in the real world, there would be a really vast, evolution of um clothing and style. Um, architectural style and otherwise. But whereas in Star Wars, it's like, well, like in KOTOR, like the aesthetics are very similar to aesthetics that we see 4,000 years later.
Yes, I remember that being
Um,
a big point of contention.
yeah, but so by making it on purpose, by making it by design,
It adds something to
um,
it.
it adds something to it. It's so now it's not jarring anymore. Now it's like, oh, okay, well now we see why that's the case, and then why in other parts, of the galaxy, things are wilder and look completely different aesthetically. So that we can go from Tales of the Jedi to KOTOR with such different aesthetics and have it make sense.
Hmm.
So
Very well said.
this is no lighthearted task working in an expanded universe. Let me tell
Fair
you, it's not for the faint of heart.
enough. Fair enough.
You have to be like certain people like Abel and Dan, um, Rich, myself, Jason. Like we have I don't know what it is. There's something in our genetic makeup that predisposes us to this kind of thing
Hmm.
where it's like, oh, it could be this, or it could, like, our minds are automatically coming up with solutions to puzzles. That's essentially,
Right. That's
yeah,
basically what
yeah,
it. Yeah, that's these retcons of yours. They're basically that. They're just like, okay, what's a plausible explanation for that? Aha! What if? Yeah,
yeah,
Palpatine had Kuat drive yards base their stuff off of Moff Moff something or other's designs. It's like, what? There you go.
right, yeah. It's fun. Like it's fun for us. Whereas for a lot of readers who maybe don't have that inclination, it's jarring. It's like, what's going on here? Like, this doesn't make any sense, and like, you don't want that. You don't, you want this universe that you love to have verisimilitude, and you know that's what we do. We try to help provide that, to make the reader's experience that much more enriching. Um, so anyway, I'm glad. Thank you for finding telling me that worked for you.
Yeah. No. For sure. Let's see. I only have two questions left from friends of mine.
Oh, cool.
So from Delta 253 slash Mandalore slash Ted Larkin slash many other names, my good friend. So he asks, the whole shtick with the Star Wars galaxy is that it's supposed to take place in our universe, but in a galaxy far, far away from our own Milky Way. Yet in SE, you extrapolate that the Star Wars galaxy is actually an entirely separate universe. When you was this an oversight when you were developing the concept of the primary, the secondary, and Illuthurian, or was this a personal choice to rework the concept of the Galaxy Far, Far Away being in our universe to perhaps explain why the Force exists in the setting but not our own? I should have probably
Um,
reread that. Rephrase.
no, no, that I think I got the gist of it. So yeah, the because the Celestials can cross universes, they're in a unique position to visit, um, like our universe, and grab grab what humans they will, and carry them over into the Sky River universe, where normally such a thing would be near impossible. Um, because the Celestials don't even play with that, generally, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
unless in necessity, unless by necessity, I should say. So, yeah, that all goes to the idea of realm distinction. Each universe is a separate, independent thing. and um, should very rarely be connection between them, but there is, because there are functional, like actual humans in Sky River, and with, like we discussed earlier, with very like Western cultural ideas and worldviews and expressions and all kinds of things that are too similar to just have emerged on its own, independently. Um, and so that required that the crossing of universes, and so the architects were the perfect vehicle to do that, and to sort of explain that, and for there to be a purpose, because Talatni obviously brings them here into Sky River, with the express purpose of using them to sow chaos,
Right.
and so that the galaxy would see that, like, oh, these celestial masters of ours, yeah, aren't as wonderful as we think they are, and then Talatni would sweep in and create the order that she felt was lacking, and then she would
Messiah
be,
complex. It's like
yes, with her Messiah complex. It's so sad, and yet I understand where she's coming from, based on you know her relationship with Woodsec, and his intent to destroy them after they're born, not realizing that they're cognizant and aware, and what that all sets into motion. So I don't know, did I give a proper answer to his question about, like, different
I guess.
universes and why?
Well,
Okay.
I guess the one thing is just what with it being set in a separate universe instead of within supposedly the Sky River being a separate reality, whether because because like I was thinking that myself. You answered that, but I can't recall the answer as to why, how come it was that you had an explanation for ET that in where when he visited, Star Wars was a fiction, was a work of fiction. It's like, how was that just an echo into the mind of George Lucas? I don't know.
The ET one was
Find
another
the
good
Journal of
one.
the Wills. Hmm?
Like, that was another interesting one, in that this firstborn race was granted that same ability, the ability to cross dimensions. And so, and this, by the way, all comes from the ET sequel book, called Book of the Green Planet, which is
Ah,
phenomenal, by the
so
way.
it
It's
shows that they
such a good book.
that shows themselves that they're capable of
There,
interdimensional
yes,
travel. Interesting.
yeah, and so the some a lot of the terminology
So he's
and
not just
and name
ET; he's also ED,
ED.
extra dimensional, not just extraterrestrial.
Extra very good, very good. It took me a second.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's exactly right. That's correct. And so, like, the pathway. Oh, I'm forgetting some of the terms. But a lot of the terms that were used for the how the Isogians do that, that all comes from that book. Um,
Mm.
and I think it's interesting. The Celestials chose wisely in allowing the Isogians to do that, because the Isogians are one of the few races that remained faithful.
In the first volume
Um,
of the first.
yes, yeah, exactly, and so, because they have this power to kind of to cross and to visit, and all they want to do is basically collect plants. I mean, they're like, that's the thing. Like, oh, we want to collect plants, and we want to, like, create, like, healing medicines, and we want to create, like, different foods, and it's all, like, it's lovely, because it's also, benevolent, and so I love that race. I think it's great. I was glad that, George
They
and
tied that
Steve
together.
kind of, like, yeah, like, cross them over, because that's a wonderful thing. Um, and so that's the reason why they can, you know, But yeah, there had to be a separation. I mean, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So we have spatial distance, and then we have temporal distance.
Mm,
Um, but we still have connection.
right.
So, distance doesn't mean disconnection. Um, it literally that opening line literally creates a connection between Earth and between the galaxy far, far away,
Right.
which the Marvel comics named Sky River.
Right.
Um,
Then
yeah,
I found it interesting you chose that term because I remember because to my understanding it was just the Nagai's term for it, but I guess that's now. I mean, it makes sense as a galactic term. The I mean, what would somebody looking from Fire Fist, the satellite
right.
galaxy, see it as? Oh, it's the river in the sky.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. And I like the poetic connection it has to Skywalker. Sky River and then the Skywalker. Yeah, I like it's subtle enough that it's not cheesy, but it was
I
clever on
never
Joe
made that
Duffy's
connection.
part. Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah, Joe, I love her writing. I think Joe Duffy was a fantastic expanded universe author who doesn't get enough credit for all that she did. Um but so yeah, that was honoring that and then giving it an earlier name, the Samonaro, which means Sky River. Um Kind of get like almost Native American um sort of nomenclature there, which
Okay.
I think actually literally translate to Sky River. And all of the galaxies, the dwarf galaxies have names that have like legit meanings. Um, which was fun. That was
Right. I
fun.
remember. I remember you had you had those. Uh, yeah. Say again.
Yeah,
It's
'cause
a, it's a linguistics
yeah,
nerd. That's nice.
yeah, yeah, because they should have names because there are peoples living, dwelling there, and
That just completely
traveling
crash
between them.
Dorn and
Yeah,
you know.
those are obviously legit too. But those came later, as
Yeah.
as designations when the knowledge of the ancient past began to fade. Which it does. Yeah, lost again. We have this idea of things, knowledge, and things that are valuable being lost. And Hextrophon, like kind of like reclaiming that, but it being rejected because it doesn't fit. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit with
Yeah.
the current model, and imagination of the modern residents.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating like thing there.
Very meta. I say again.
Very meta.
So we reach the final question from my friend Nitro again.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for any new and upcoming science fiction slash fantasy writers?
Read, read as much as you can. Read, read, read. Um, go back, go back to those early, untrammeled, wild sources. Some of the ones I've mentioned today. Read them because some of them are such great, great writers, and we don't see that level of writing in the modern day anymore. It certainly was something I tried to capture. Not that I'm saying that necessarily you want to stylistically emulate them. That's something I chose to do because it's kind of just what comes out. But particularly in a scenario like this where it fits. But what I'm saying is read great stuff, read terrible stuff too. So you get a sense of like what doesn't work and why it doesn't work. Read modern, read ancient, read things that are completely outside of the genre entirely so that you know how best to incorporate that. Thank you. Um so like this was something that like the pulp writers were very firmly grounded in. Robert E. Howard could write westerns. Lee Brackett could write mysteries with the best of them. they had grounding in different genres, and in that way they were able to bring, even if it's just like elements of them, um because I think that's all important, particularly if you are, like, writing space opera, which really does incorporate a wide palette of genres that kind of make up, everything from horror to romance, to seafaring adventures, to um, it's just everything under the sun, really. Adventure, like classic adventure stories. So just, yeah, really kind of try to get a handle on those, particularly those very influential things. Um, and I think that will give you a better, because whether it's conscious or not, that will kind of give you a grounding for your own writing. Uh, and I guess it'll just, we discussed this earlier today. These things will just emerge. If you've read enough, like, you'll get and then the other second part of it too is practice. Like, I know I said read, 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 but I need to also add to that write, write, write. Like, just keep writing. Um, if you've got, friends, or if you've got even better, if you can get like a writers group, join a writers group of people that are balanced and sane and honest, um, and be yourself, be balanced and sane and honest. Um, we talked earlier, like, don't get precious about your stuff, about criticism, because you grow from the criticism that people give you, and it doesn't mean you have to necessarily follow every piece of criticism. Like, not people who offer advice. That's advice is always welcome, but it's not always right. Sometimes you do have to follow your gut instinct, but sometimes there's a reason that they bring something up, like something doesn't sit maybe well with them. And I'll give you, like, a quick example. I had Matt Wilkins read the beta version, and he came upon Mam and Hool, and he's like, I don't see the character as portrayed in your book as harmonizing with the one from the Galaxy of Fear series, because he was so mild, back then, and so that I thought about it and I pondered. I'm like, yeah, you're right, and I know why I had portrayed him differently, but I hadn't articulated it to the reader. And so I made it clear in just one line, where I said, like, normally Mammon Hool was cool and I'm paraphrasing here. It was, cool and collected, with
That's right.
everything from children to ravaging monsters. But when it came to his fellow historians, like, they just pushed him over the edge.
That's right.
You remember that? So, and I was appreciative of that advice, because I may not have remembered to ever articulate that. And I think it is important, because you don't want to disconnect. So, yeah, be kind to those who give advice to you, even if you don't apply their advice, because it is generally valuable.
You might be
Um,
surprised where wisdom comes from.
yeah, yeah, out of the mouth of babes, sometimes. But also too, like I said earlier, write when you write something. First of all, when you do write, that's another piece of advice that I learned the hard way. Don't stop. Don't stop in the middle of writing to edit yourself. Just keep going. Just
Mm.
go, 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 go. Don't worry about, this is a draft. It's just a draft. You will come back later and do another draft. But you want to get it all out. It doesn't matter if it works or doesn't work, or if you end up going in different directions. At least by having something there, you're then able to work on that thing, and then build on it and change it. But the hardest part for a lot of writers is really just the beginning. It's just getting something. I almost said on paper, but on a screen, because now we're all doing it digitally. Um, that's more important. So, just if you've got ideas, just get them out, just right, and then later you come back and you correct for grammar, or you correct for like Mel, you came up with a better idea. That's and then when you have a draft, like I said earlier, walk away for a week, don't look at it, and come back and then reread it anew, and you'll be surprised at what you discover in that process. Like there's no like substitute for that, for taking time away from it. This is, I think, too, part of the problem that we have with the modern sort of industrial system of writing professionally, is that we're called upon to meet these very narrow deadlines, and majority of writers can't really do what they need to do, to make a story as great as it can be within that short frame. I mean, they can do it. Like, and if you've written long enough, you can definitely pump stuff out. But is it as good as it could be? Has it done? Has he done all the research that he could have done? Like, like these things. It's just, there isn't time oftentimes for that, because of these short deadlines. So it's a half a miracle. It's half a miracle. Like Yoda Dark Rendezvous. Like he Sean Stewart, I think, created a masterpiece, and he did it in a very short span of time. He's the one who replaced William Dietz's Escape from Dagu. And that's, you do get better at it. Like, the more you write, the stronger your muscles get, and you are able to write quicker and stronger, because you've been doing it longer, and your instincts are better, and you're able to trust your instincts more. So yeah, right. Don't be concerned about criticism. Welcome it, so that will help you improve. And yeah, if you can join a writers group of some kind, that's helpful, because you hear other people's writings, and you're able to give them input, and they give you input. It's a cool thing. And if you can't, then you can get some friends who'll give you honest advice. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Otherwise, yeah.
Fair enough.
I'm sure there's more, but I can't think of it at the moment. Yeah.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, now we finally reach the conclusion.
Wow.
So
Nice.
yeah, thank you so much
Quarter
for
to
sticking
midnight.
with me this long. So
You may have to release it in parts.
I think so. I'm probably gonna have to cut this into 7 parts. Yeah, I don't know. I just
Do what you gotta do.
yeah, I just wanted to so say just that Coda. Wow. Like, as we talked about a little bit earlier, what a love letter to all, of the EU stuff. And
Thank you.
you finally brought everything full circle, ending with a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, as it was said to have been told by R2 and 3PO in some super obscure material. Funnily enough, and I imagine by pure coincidence, they referenced the very same thing in the Ahsoka show, like 2 weeks after you released SC, albeit in very different context with a different droid. Actually, that and the concepts of the Dathomiri, which is not originating from Alia. Funny how coincidences can occur, but yeah.
Yeah, weird synchronicities there. I saw that. I was like, well, people were telling me, because they had seen it before I did, and they said, "Oh, you're gonna like that episode." And I was like, "Oh," when I saw it, I'm like, "Oh man, I see what you mean. There's a wavelength here, like, going on, that there's unconscious wavelength."
You might say it's the Force.
We just might. I'm on board with that idea.
But I've always loved the idea of it. Yeah, just all being, R2 telling it to the Wills, and
Yeah.
eventually, like, I guess it ties into the whole Tolkien finding the Red
Red
of
Pill.
West March or whatever, and then
Yeah.
I guess George found
Yeah.
the Journal of the Wills, and I just it's so it's like
It's
poetry. It rhymes.
like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah.
We Great.
Our minds think alike.
That's
Um,
right.
so at long last, is there anything else you'd like to plug? Where can people find you online besides just your site, StarWarsTimeline.net?
Um, I would say come, like if you can follow the basic rules of, kindness and respect, no politics and no blocking mods, come on to the Discord server because, we've got a lot planned in terms of preserving the EU as we know it, and also There is more coming. The Hungarian Han Solo books have finally been translated, thanks to Matthew Smith, who did all and I'm sorry, there's another translator who worked with him. Apologies, I his name escapes me at the moment. Um, I will give myself a lashing for that, but like they did the bulk of that work. It's just on me now to edit it and maybe get a few other proofreaders to go over it. So there's more EU coming. Jesus, the German Ewoks translations that Thomas Rathowski did. Those are coming. Um, there are projects underway of people translating the French role-playing game magazines like Casus Belli, which I think Nick Schuessler is either spearheading or is a part of. But you can speak to him. Like I said, not Shay. Shay was our graphic designer who did a phenomenal job on the book on Supernatural Encounters, like the different covers. But I meant to say Corey has the Supernatural Encounters Atlas coming. Kevin Beangentis has sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, has the Supernatural Encounters Alien Guide coming. So, I think I mentioned the Otherworldly Encounters, which is a future project. There's a lot of projects that are coming down the pike. So if you want to be any part of that, any of that, or just be around for these things, I also have released a few goodies that are pinned that you can find and download for your own collection. Some rarities. So there's a lot going on there. And honestly, like you don't have to be you don't have to be a fan of necessarily Supernatural Encounters or whatever to be part of that. I think that just respect each other, and be kind to each other, and you're welcome to join. We have a good team that moderates, so we don't allow bullies and trolls to take over. Which has happened in other places, which spoils it for everybody. But they're also not overly heavy with the hammer either. So balance, balance with the force. Find balance with the force. It's a good group, and we want to grow it. We want to be a hub of amongst other hubs that are interested in ensuring that the EU is still celebrated and is still preserved. Um, you know, uh, it sounds like a simple thing. It's a challenging thing because we're humans and like things happen, but you know we are building and we are growing and join the community. I will send a link over if you contact me. I'm at the Sith Empire at msn.com. Um, but yeah, by all means. And as far as if some of you have questions as to whether there's going to be another physical release, because I know some of you missed out on that during its window, there there's a PDF available. I'm gonna release an EPUB version soon that um um Makati created for us, which was super super awesome. And there will also be a two set paperback edition, possibly unillustrated or possibly with black and white illustrations. I'm not sure yet. I have to talk to Dave about that. Um, and of course, with Legends Con 2025, there should be more convention editions made available at that time. So you don't feel like you've missed out. I'm trying to avoid a kind of a Heart of the Jedi situation where, like eBay is like selling it for, whatever, $500+ Like I'm hoping to try and circumvent that by at least making some kind of other physical edition available, again at cost for you guys. So that's pretty much it. A lot happening, a lot more to come.
Great to hear. Once again, I want to say thank you for coming on here, and may the force be with you.
And also with you.